All right, I'm trying to get myself motivated with this car. I got a big list of things to do. I have a week and a half off of work right now for Christmas and New Year's, so I don't go back to work till January 2nd. And today is what? It's the first day of winter, December 21st. So we don't have enough snow for any sort of snowmobiling yet, other than maybe just a little bit of playing around. But I got a list of things I want to do on this car. Trying to keep myself motivated, get out here as much as I can. I got my whole list right here. So basically I wanted to get things rolling, fuel line, get that mounted, the power by the hour accessories and alternator and all that stuff. Coolant hoses and that whole system and relays for that. Start getting some brake lines and hoses in here. Figure out if I'm going to use that proportioning valve. Get the diff and drive shaft up in so I can route everything up around that. Maybe I should, well, I'm gonna get some stuff starting to situate with the fuel line and then maybe go there. And then the headers and the X-pipe, the headers, I've seen some other people complain about the BBK. The headers don't quite line up with the cross member, so if you did a tube straight back off of the headers, they bump into the kind of the arches in the Stifler's cross member, so I'm going to see what I can do about that. Yeah, I just want to start getting this thing buttoned up. The goal, again, is to have this thing roll out of this garage under its own power and some sort of a, I'm not going to say finished, but in some fashion with a body mostly on it, that sort of thing. So my whole plan is I'd like to get everything above this line done before January 2nd when I go back to work, and then maybe figure out what I want to do for intake ducting and that sort of thing. So I'm still debating if I want to take and run this intake out through the inner fender here so it's sitting out here, or if I want to build a little box, but that box isn't going to be too big for an intake filter. So, air filter. But I'm going to take you guys along for the ride. I don't know how much work I'm going to show, and just kind of go and show the steps along the way of what I'm doing here. It's just to show how I obsess over different things. So here's my fuel line, and I just didn't like how this was kinked and up against the firewall and everything like that. So I'm kind of thinking I'd like to move this and put an elbow in here. And then also I don't like how this sits and then you see all the fuel lines like when you sit and look into the engine bay. So I kind of want to get the fuel pressure regulator mounted down here where the bracket is. So I actually have an idea. I order a couple more elbows so I could run this up, this line off and up to the side here, and have a 90-degree elbow there to kind of clean that up a little bit. And I still got the original bracket for the fuel pressure regulator. So I think I'm going to mount it pretty close to where this bracket is right now. And then I was trying to figure out, I've actually been out here for like 2 hours just kind of messing around, putting things in different spots and figuring things out. So I did order a couple more elbows like this. And I think what I'm going to do is cut a slot in this inner fender well here and kind of fold it out. And thanks to Funky 5.0, he had a video where he cut a notch out right here and ran the fuel lines up through here and out of there. So I think what I'm going to try to do is just maybe cut a couple notches in here and try to bend it out a little bit, is kind of what I'm thinking right now. And kind of the same thing here, I might just cut a slot and just fold it out and run the fuel lines up through there to get to a fuel pressure regulator mounted up on the inside of the fender here. So I'm going to figure this out and probably come back and show you what I figure out here in a little bit. I might actually cut the slot so it's further up here and take the upward flap, fold it out, take the bottom flap, fold it in a little bit, and kind of see what I'm doing here. I think I'm gonna have to replace this section anyway. But part of it too is I want to leave room here because I think I might want to do that Fathead fabrication air conditioning kit where it puts the condenser, I think that's what it's called, out here, and you run your AC lines up through this hole here. So I don't want to run my fuel lines through there and run out of space. So that's my thought for now. And I'm going to get started and actually do the work and then come back and show you. Again, I'm not going to have you sit here and watch me cut and bend some metal around, but I'll show you the end results. So I was messing around with the fuel pressure regulator yesterday. So I messed around with it. I thought about putting it here, and then I wasn't sure about putting it there. So then I thought, well, maybe I'll put it on the inside of the strut tower towards the engine. And I thought, well, maybe I want it looking a little bit neater and cleaner from the front of the engine bay here, although it is what it is. It's not like it's going to be a show car. And I finally decided on, as you can see, I decided on putting it on the back side of the strut tower, so I got it mounted there. I got the original bracket that came with the fuel pressure regulator, so it's angled down instead of angled up. Then I thought I'd try different things, and the reason I wasn't sure about moving it before was, well, then you couldn't run the fuel lines up through this hole. Then I thought, well, I could put it on the inside of the strut tower and run it up and around and up through this hole, but then it's got so many bends. I'm like, well, I don't really want to cut this up, but then again, maybe I do. And I think I pointed out before, there's like a bunch of surface rust and even holes worn through there, rusted through there. So I think I'm going to end up replacing this panel at some point. But at least now, as you can see here, I did decide to just cut a hole through here, and I did kind of mangle it, make it a little bit too big, but I'm thinking, well, when I go to redo it, I'll probably just punch a hole or an oval shaped hole and kind of flare the edges of the holes out somehow. And you can see here I did put a clip on here already to kind of hold the fuel lines in place. And thanks to Funky 5.0, I'll give him credit for this. I know he ended up cutting a notch out of his, if I am remembering right. But he gave me a pointer that that's what he did. And I really like that idea. It kind of should keep it out of the way of the tire. I think I had plenty of room here when I was doing my little test fitting deal. So I'm hoping all this is going to be fine and dandy when it's all done. I'm thinking it should be, so it runs up through a hole in the bottom of the cross member here. So I figure I'll start from the front and work my way back, because these lines are much longer than they really need to be. So knowing what I know now and watching other people cut their own PTFE braided line, I'm kind of wishing I would have done that now, but this is what I got. So you can see here, I got it running back. I'm going to run it along the outside behind the pinch weld here is what I'm thinking. And then I do have it run up so it goes up above the subframe connector, and above and on the inside there we got the bracket or whatever for the emergency brake cables. So it's running up and above there, so I'll kind of loop it back and up and over the IRS subframe. So I'll get under there and show you that in a little bit, but I figure I'll just start from the front and work my way back and try to take as much slack out of this. And I thought that would just be best instead of trying to run it up and underneath subframe connectors or anything like that. Probably could run it up underneath this part because it won't be the lowest part of the car, but I thought, well, maybe I'll just keep it next to the pinch welds there and run it up and over that subframe connector. I'll just show what I got here. So I'll hop down on the creeper. Of course, comes down through that inner fender apron that I need to replace because that looks like crap. Cut a notch through this member here. I'll probably do something when I go to do some body work to kind of clean this up and close up some gaps there. Run down through here. I got nice little clamps just running all along here. Run right down the passenger footwell. I might even put some more in here maybe. But right now these are all self-tapping screws. My intention here is when I go to put this in for the final time after doing body work or whatever, or getting the bottom side of this car cleaned up, I'm going to go through and get rid of the self-tapping screws and use rivets. So again, runs up here above the subframe connector, and just in case, because I know the original parking brake came up right here from the center of the drive shaft tunnel back to here, but I used clamps to kind of keep it up and away. Ran it back there, and you can see it goes above that IRS subframe and up to the underside of the trunk into the fuel pressure regulator. Then down for the fuel tank, and I just stuck some zip ties on it for the time being, and back up to the fuel tank here. So I'll probably have to put something over the top of these lines where it's up against the frame rail and everything here. But so just one thing I really noticed was the return line. It's quite a bit longer than it really needs to be, so I did just use a couple extra loops up here and still kind of ran it above the fuel filter. But yeah, it's got some extra length there. Then you can see there I kind of spaced them out too where they round a corner there. So my whole thought is there, we got the IRS with the differential here, so it'll be up, but that drive shaft should be stationary, so it should never really get too close to where those fuel lines are. Then of course 2 mufflers sit up under here, so maybe when I do go to do this the final time, I'll put some kind of heat wrap or something around them to keep the heat off of the fuel lines. But at least that's my thoughts for now. I think if I was going to redo this, I wonder if I'd just run a return line right down along the pinch weld, then maybe up through this fender and above everything and straight back to the tank instead of looping it across here. But not a huge difference. So that's the fuel lines. Again, like I said, the self-tapping screws are not going to be permanent. I'll use those same holes and pop rivets in there at some point after I get the bottom side of the car cleaned up and painted.